All right, now we're gonna take a look at painting the intermediate or the tertiaries. So the 6 remaining little empty spots that you've got left. You know, it's gonna be the same process for all 6 of them. So if you wanna start with a different one than I'm gonna start with, that's completely fine with me. It's your own prerogative, but I'm gonna demo how to do the yellow green. And as long as you can remember the process, I'm gonna leave you to your own devices to do the rest of those 5. So, like I said, yellow green. I know that I'm gonna need yellow and blue to get my yellow green, just because to get green, those are the 2 colors that I'm gonna have to have. Now, the big difference here between yellow, yellow green, and green is that our yellow green is gonna have both of those colors within. So, when you have both of the colors within one, you want to be sure that it looks a little more on the primary color side than the secondary color side. So here is the printed version, and this is the new scan that I posted to our Google Classroom, but I can see a much better version of the yellow-green on this copy than I could on the previous photo that we had posted to the Google Classroom. So to begin, I'm gonna crack the lid on both of these. I've got my same 3 paint brushes. I've got my water, I've got my towel, I've got my tester sheet. I'm gonna take one brush. Be sure you rinse and dry that brush, especially if you maybe left a little paint in it the last time you were working. But on my paint sheet, I'm gonna start with my yellow. I'm gonna get a good kind of full brush load, maybe even add a little more. And then I'm gonna put that brush in water, take another one. Now, when I add my blue to my yellow, it's just like adding black to yellow. Blue is a heavier color, it's a darker color, so it's going to make an impact and it's going to make a visible change pretty quickly. So I'm gonna use a little bit of blue, just a little. I don't even know if you can see on camera. Ooh, just a little bit of blue, not a bunch. And I'm gonna take, before I paint this in, I'm gonna wipe some of that onto this paint sheet, and then I'm gonna mix. So I want it to look more on the yellow side than the green side. So I'm gonna mix this all in together. Set my brush down. I've got my tester sheet right here. Get a little bit of that on my fingertip. Press and swipe. Now, here's the original one where this is thinning just a little bit. I'm gonna fold that over and then I'm gonna lay it right down on top. Now, if you look, you can see that my yellow-green right now is still a little too on the yellow side. So that means I'm gonna need to add just a little more blue, and that's all right, I don't have to re-dip in there. I just take what I have here, add that to my brush, mix that in, and you can see just by adding a very, very, very finite, very small amount of that blue, it made quite a sizable difference. So I mixed it all in. I got rid of the marbling. I'll take, and I'm gonna swipe test this right next to my original. Fold it in half. Check it. It's still not quite there, but it's a little bit closer. So I'm gonna be patient. I'm gonna take my time and do this right. Dip just a little more blue. Add it in. And then try it one more time. All right, let's see if that's gonna get me a little bit closer. Oh, I can already tell that those are still way too similar. So I'm gonna take a clean brush, add a little more blue to my paint sheet, dip. Ooh, that might be too much. There we go. Now, if I accidentally go overboard, let's say I add a little too much blue to this, well, no big deal. I don't have to throw this away and start from scratch. All I have to do, take and add very cautiously a fair amount of yellow back into it. That way it gets me a little closer to what I need. All right, I think this one is gonna do. Yeah, that one looks just about right. Okay, so I've got my hue of my yellow-green, that's this right here. So I'm gonna load up my brush, and just like the others, very carefully paint in the hue. Now, the kind of tricky part or the downside that some people notice when they're doing secondary colors and tertiary colors or intermediate colors, I'm going to use both of those phrases or both of those words to refer to it as. So if I ever say tertiary, just know I mean intermediate. And if I ever say intermediate, just know I mean tertiary. They're both the same, just one sounds a little fancier. One makes me feel a little bit smarter when I say it. But the downside that some people notice is that, they get about halfway through painting the hue and they realize, ooh, I don't quite have enough paint to go through and finish the tint and the shade. I'm gonna run into that problem right here. So I'm gonna stretch this. I'm gonna use as much of this hue as I can in order to get a well-covered hue of yellow-green. And then before I move on and take a look at doing the tint, I'm actually gonna remix just a little bit more of this on my paint sheet. So while that's drying, I'm gonna take these two brushes, clean those. And, all right, so I'm gonna add a little more yellow here. Toss that in my water. Add a little more blue right there. And then since this brush was already used to apply the hue, I can continue using it while I'm mixing these. So I'm gonna take that yellow, mix this all in. Remember, get rid of the marbling, even though it looks kind of cool, like all of those fun things you see hydro dipped on YouTube. But gotta get rid of the marbling. Okay, now I'm gonna add a little bit of blue. Mix that all in. Okay. Now, when I go to test this time around, I don't have to worry about comparing it to this color wheel because I have my final version of the yellow-green hue right here. So all I have to do is just be sure I can match this one. So dip a little, that's a lot. Swipe right next to it. Let her dry. Wow, looks like I got lucky. I got the right version. Okay, so now that I've got plenty of that hue, now I can take my white, clean one of my brushes. Especially when you go to dip your brush in white, ooh, you really want to be sure that everything's nice and clean. All right. Get a good brush load of white. I'm gonna add it here on this. Remember, I've already got the hue in the bristles of this, so I'm not gonna re-dip into my hue. I'm gonna take what I've got here, mix this in completely with my white to give myself a good tinted, or no, yep, oops, almost misspoke there. A good tinted version of this yellow-green. Yeah. Remember, you want the tint to be visibly lighter than the hue, and you want the shade to be visibly darker than the hue and the tint. So here we go. Painting this in. Nice and slow, corner to corner, edge to edge. You don't want to have any of the white paper visible within those paintable spaces. Now, my favorite part of doing these color wheels is doing the tint. For some reason, the tint always ends up making the color look a little more pleasing to the eye. But I think with the tint, you're able to really see the subtle change from one color to the next. So once I'm done painting the tint, I'm gonna look at yellow, yellow-green, and green tint. And you can see how closely related those three really are. But they don't look the same, and that's the key. You don't want any of those colors to be looking identical to one another. If it's got a different color name, it should look visibly different than the one next to it. Okay, now I've got the shade next. I'll rinse out my brush, dry this off, take a little bit of black, just a little bit. Because remember, like yellow, you know, those lighter colors, when you add black to them, it can get real dark real quick. So add a little bit at a time. And if you want to play it extra safe, put just a little on your paint sheet. Take what's on the bristles, mix that into your hue, and see what it gives you. Remember, it should look darker than the hue and the shade, or the hue and the tint. Man, is it Friday yet? No, only Tuesday. All right, I think that is gonna be plenty dark enough. That looks quite visibly darker than the hue. All right, now, slide that carefully out of the way. Here I go. Dee-dee-dee, very carefully. Edge to edge, corner to corner. Being careful not to set my hand down on top of any of that wet paint, because I don't want to smear and smudge anything. I don't want to accidentally get paint of a different color sandwiched over top with the paint that's maybe next to it or across from it. The nice thing about this painted color wheel is you know exactly how I'm grading this. It is written right down here at the bottom. Color accuracy and neatness. So how accurately did you mix your colors? You know, your red, your yellow, and your blue are gonna be the easiest ones, just because you don't have to mix anything to get your red, your yellow, or your blue. But as you continue with the secondaries and then into the tertiaries or the intermediates, be sure it's as accurate as you can get it. Okay, so that is my version of painting the tertiary or of painting the intermediates. I'm gonna flip over to a time lapse. I'm gonna do the blue, green, blue, violet, red, orange, and yellow, orange. If you would like to just move on with those on your own, you are most welcome from me.